In the high Andes of Peru, in the year 1532, a single act of treachery changed the course of history forever. Picture this: a vast empire stretching thousands of miles, home to millions of people, ruled by a god-king whose word was law. The Inca Empire was a marvel of engineering and organization, roads that rivaled Rome's, terraced farms feeding an entire civilization, and a system of runners carrying messages faster than any horse could gallop. At its helm was Atahualpa, the Sapa Inca, fresh from a brutal civil war where he defeated his half-brother Huáscar to claim the throne. He was seen as divine, the son of the sun god Inti, and his subjects trembled at his name. But across the ocean, a band of ragged adventurers from Spain, led by a tough, illiterate soldier named Francisco Pizarro, had set their sights on this golden land. They weren't explorers in the noble sense. They were conquerors, driven by tales of riches from earlier scouts like Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who crossed Panama and glimpsed the Pacific. Pizarro, in his 50s, had already failed twice in Peru, but this third try was different. He had royal backing from King Charles V, who granted him the right to conquer in exchange for a cut of the loot. Pizarro's force was tiny, just 168 men, including 62 on horseback, a handful of cannons, and some harquebuses, primitive guns that spat fire and smoke. They landed on the coast in 1531 and marched inland, hearing whispers of the Inca civil war that had weakened the empire. Atahualpa, meanwhile, was relaxing in the thermal baths near Cajamarca after his victory, surrounded by an army of 80,000 warriors. He knew about these bearded stranger scouts had reported their arrival, but he dismissed them as a curiosity, perhaps even minor deities or bandits. Why fear a few dozen men when you command millions? Evidence from Spanish chroniclers like Pedro Cisa de Leon, who wrote in his Crónica del Peru based on eyewitness accounts, describes Atahualpa's confidence. He sent envoys with gifts, including llamas and pottery, to gauge the invaders, but saw no real threat. As Pizarro approached Cajamarca on November 15, 1532, the town was empty. The Incas had cleared it out, leaving an eerie silence. Pizarro's men were terrified. They hid in buildings around the main plaza, praying and confessing sins, expecting death. But Pizarro had a plan inspired by Hernán Cortés' capture of Montezuma in Mexico a decade earlier. He invited Atahualpa to a feast in the plaza, promising peace. Atahualpa, intrigued and arrogant, agreed but arrived the next day, November 16th, not with his full army but with 7,000 unarmed attendants, nobles, dancers, and servants in a grand procession. He was carried on a golden litter adorned with feathers and emeralds, wearing a crown of gold and a necklace of massive emeralds. His guards, about 3,000 to 8,000 strong, waited outside the town, armed but relaxed. The meeting started tense. Friar Vicente de Valverde, the expedition's priest, approached with a Bible and a breviary, demanding Atahualpa submit to Christianity and the Spanish crown. Through an interpreter named Felipillo, a native boy captured earlier, Valverde preached about God and the Pope's authority to divide the world. Atahualpa, puzzled, took the Bible, flipped through it, and tossed it aside, saying it spoke nothing to him. "Where is this God you speak of?" he reportedly asked, according to accounts in the royal commentaries of the Incas by Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, a mestizo chronicler who drew from oral histories. This rejection was the signal. Hidden Spaniards opened fire, cannons boomed, harquebuses cracked, and cavalry charged from the buildings. The plaza turned into a slaughterhouse. Unarmed Incas, packed tightly, couldn't flee. They piled up in heaps, trampled and cut down by steel swords. Thousands died in minutes. Estimates from Spanish sources like Francisco de Xeres, Pizarro's secretary, put the dead at 2,000 to 7,000, with no Spanish casualties except one wounded and a dead slave. In the chaos, Pizarro himself rushed to Atahualpa's litter, slashing at bearers until it toppled. He grabbed the emperor by the hair, pulling him to safety, not out of mercy but value. Atahualpa was now a hostage, the key to the empire. Shackled in a room, he quickly grasped his situation. To buy freedom, he offered a ransom fill a room 22 feet long, 17 feet wide, and 8 feet high with gold, and twice that with silver. Pizarro agreed, seeing fortune. Over months, treasures poured in gold statues, jewelry, plates from across the empire. Chroniclers like Cesar de Leon detailed the haul over 13,000 pounds of gold and 26,000 pounds of silver worth millions today. But Atahualpa's fate was sealed. Rumors spread of an Inca rescue army, and Pizarro feared losing control. In July 1533, after a sham trial accusing Atahualpa of treason, idolatry, and fratricide, he was sentenced to burn at the stake. To avoid that horrific death, Incas believed burning prevented afterlife. Atahualpa converted to Christianity, taking the name Francisco, and was garroted instead on July 26, 1533. This kidnapping didn't just kill a man, it decapitated an empire. Without Atahualpa, the Incas fractured. His generals were divided and resistance crumbled. Pizarro installed a puppet ruler, Manco Inca, but pressed on to Cusco, the Inca capital, arriving in November 1533. They looted temples, melting sacred objects into ingots. Rebellions flared. Manco Inca led a massive siege of Cusco in 1536, nearly wiping out the Spaniards, but superior weapons and alliances with rival Inca factions prevailed. By 1540, the core of the empire was under Spanish control. The holdouts like Vilcabamba persisted until 1572. The conquest brought smallpox and other diseases, killing up to 90% of the population, as evidenced by demographic studies from archaeologists like John Verano, who examined mass graves showing epidemic patterns. Why did this overthrow an empire? The Incas had no concept of guns or horses. Horses seemed like centaurs, guns like thunder gods. Their quipu system of knotted strings tracked everything efficiently, but couldn't countersteel. Atahualpa's capture exposed the empire's vulnerability. It was highly centralized, so losing the leader paralyzed it. As historian Jared Diamond notes, in guns, germs, and steel, Eurasian advantages in technology, immunity, and organization doomed the Incas. For example, during the ambush, Incas tried grabbing horse tails, thinking they were part of the rider, only to be trampled, a tragic misunderstanding detailed in Spanish letters home. This story isn't just ancient history, it echoes in the Americas today. The fall of the Incas paved the way for Spanish colonies, influencing modern Peru, Bolivia, and beyond. In the U.S., it ties to broader colonial legacies. Think how Thanksgiving stories gloss over similar conquests in North America. Artifacts from the ransom, like gold pieces and Madrid museums, stand as evidence, and excavations at Cajamarca reveal massacre sites with cut bones matching sword wounds. It's a human tale of ambition, betrayal, and loss. Pizarro, once a swineherd, became viceroy but was assassinated by rivals in 1541. Atahualpa's descendants blended into colonial society, their empire reduced to ruins like Machu Picchu, rediscovered in 1911 by Hiram Bingham, whose Yale expeditions brought back thousands of artifacts, sparking debates on cultural repatriation. Imagine the terror in that plaza, the screams, the blood, the confusion as gods fell, or Atahualpa in chains, plotting escape while his world unraveled. This wasn't inevitable. A different choice, like arming his entourage, might have changed everything. But history turned on that kidnapping, toppling an empire that had stood for centuries. And in its wake, a new world emerged, forged in gold and grief.